Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's great to be here. And welcome to all the visitors who are here. Who are visitors? Let me see the visitors. Hi. Wow, visitors, all right. Hey, now that Reverend Peter's not here, I want to take my chance to complain about him a little bit. First of all, why in his time here does he get all the good ministers to join your church? Reverend Carol, Reverend Sandra, who else? Is there another one I missed? Yeah. Elizabeth, right. How many do I get? None. So I'm just complaining. Number two, how does he get all the letters to the editor and the Inquirer? I think he's got something on somebody over there, by the way. No, I'm very proud of him for that and all his ministry, and I think you'll see in my sermon today that him doing that and all that you're doing on social justice is exactly in line with, I hope, our faith movement is doing. And in all seriousness, I'm very happy for what's going on here with you and Reverend Peter and Irene, and I know there's so much thriving and good ministry and happiness going on. Sabbatical is a really good thing. I know you think, okay, the minister, of course, he's going to say that. But I am really confident that you all are going to have a great experience, and Peter's going to have a great experience, and the next stage of your time together will be great energy and ideas and momentum. So I look forward to that. The reading today, a number of you have connected with in the past. It's Good to Great, written by Jim Collins, who's a business writer, professor, and what he did was, I think there were 10 companies that he identified as having gone from performing well or good or mediocre over a period, and then they had a 15-plus year time where they became great companies defined by profit, and tried to identify some of the defining characteristics of what helped those companies go from good to great. And one of the ways he identifies it is called the Stockdale paradox, which he developed from Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was a POW in Vietnam, and how he handled that situation. So here's a reading from the book. Collins has reached out to Stockdale, they've connected, and they're going to come together for lunch. These are Collins' words. In preparation for the lunch, I read In Love and War, which is the book Stockdale and his wife Sybil had written in alternating chapters chronicling their experiences during those 8 years when he was a POW. As I moved through the book, I found myself getting depressed. It just seemed so bleak. The uncertainty of his fate, the brutality of his captors, and so forth. And then it dawned on me, here I am sitting in my warm and comfortable office looking out over this beautiful Stanford campus on a beautiful afternoon, and I'm getting depressed reading this, and I know how the story ends. I know that he gets out, reunites with his family, becomes a national hero, and gets to spend the later part of his life studying and writing. So if it feels depressing for me, how on earth did he deal with it when he was actually there and he didn't know how the story was going to end? So I got a chance a little later to ask him, and when I did, he said, I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted, not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect now I would not trade for anything. So I didn't say anything for a few minutes, and we continued walking along, Stockdale limping with his stiff leg that never fully recovered from repeated torture. And finally I said, well, who did not make it out? Oh, that's easy, he said. The optimists. The optimists. I don't understand, I said. Now I was confused given what he had just said a few minutes back. The optimists, oh, they were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go. And then they say, we're going to be out by Easter. And Easter would come and Easter would go. And then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again. And they died of a broken heart. Another long pause and more walking, and then he turned to me and said, this is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline of confronting the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. To this day, I carry a mental image of Stockdale admonishing the optimists, we are not getting out by Christmas, and we have to deal with it. Imagine Admiral Jim Stockdale sits in his small, dank cell with a pen that barely works, scratching out a letter to his wife on crumpled, dirty paper. As you know, dear, they call it the Hanoi Hilton, not because it's a luxury hotel. This is the sarcastic name given by American prisoners. The other name for this place is Hua Lo, which someone told me means fiery furnace. On a good day, they give us 3 cups of water to take a bath. On a good day, they give us food. Now, there was plenty that he could not explicitly write, but in their letters, he and his wife developed code words which empowered them to say a bit more. Similar to Moses, Admiral Stockdale did not want to lead, but he felt that he had no choice given the context. In 8 years, he himself was tortured over 20 times. Yet he stayed focused and did everything he could to protect his people from being broken. In order to prevent his captors from using him as an example of how prisoners were treated well, Stockdale deliberately beat himself with a stool and cut himself with a razor. The prisoners were prohibited from building relationships. On a good day, the prisoners understood the scratching of the rakes and the swooshing of the brooms. Those were parts of the complex communication system that Stockdale helped to establish so that the prisoners could express themselves and feel less isolated emotionally. Admiral Jim Stockdale never lost faith in the end of the story. He never lost hope that he would get out and in the end prevail. He believed he could turn this experience into a defining event in his life. So, you might be asking, why does this matter to us today, to you today? Well, Stanford professor Jim Collins thinks there are many life lessons to learn from the Stockdale paradox, and I agree. For the book, he was looking once again at the companies that went from doing good to great over a 10-year period, and he was trying to isolate significant factors that distinguish those companies from the hundreds of others on the market. And in doing so, he came to see that all of these great companies had faced and overcome adversity of significant nature. They stayed hopeful and realistic in making a positive way forward out of choppy waters. Thankfully, none of us are prisoners of war, but we are members of the human family, and we have And many of us are facing very difficult circumstances. Of course, I'm a visitor here. I don't know what most all of you are going through, but I'm sure there's some heavy hearts in here for your own experience, or a loved one, a neighbor, a grown child. And as global citizens, we are facing at least one, if not two, significant crises. Definitely ecological, and I would argue that we're also continue to face economic global crises with population growth up and resources that are healthy to meet the supply going down. David Bumbaugh is a Unitarian Universalist minister and professor emeritus from our UU seminary in Chicago. And Reverend Bumbaugh is making the rounds nationally and arguing with persuasion that the human species needs a massive wake-up call. To make his point, he says, polar ice caps and mountain glaciers are melting with ever greater rapidity. Species are disappearing at alarming rates. The thawing Arctic tundra is emitting tons of methane into the atmosphere. Desertification is expanding across Australia. Rogue weather sweeps the globe. Texas, wrapped in drought, burns, while the Midwest and the Northeast are swept by floods. Famine stalks Africa, and food shortages provoke riots around the globe. Precious, irreplaceable aquifers dry up, and dust storms blow away precious topsoil. Thinking in the same direction, Bill McKibber recently published his book, Earth, Making Life on a Tough New Planet, and he spells Earth with 2 A's to make his point. Looking at population growth and environmental distress, McKibbins argues that we human beings must accept that we have lost the fight, insofar as our goal was to preserve the world we were born into, because that's not the world we live on any longer. And there is no good that comes from pretending otherwise. We have traveled to a new planet, he says, propelled on a burst of carbon dioxide. And we're going to have to figure out how to stop focusing our economies on growth and to start focusing on survival. This means embracing local, more small-scale ways of living. The trajectory has been so interesting in the past 5 years. The Great Recession, Arab Spring, Occupy and Tea Party sort of battling it out, you could say, on the different ends of the spectrum. And now we might be lulled into thinking everything's a lot better. Unemployment's about 8 now. The Dow Jones is ticking around 14,000. That's good for a lot of investments. But there are so many people still in distress. Here in Pennsylvania, most of you are aware, we have the most gas company drilling friendly state, one of the very most friendly ones in the whole United States of America. And the gas companies, in my opinion, are plundering our earth and not putting enough back for the common good. That's a long story, but I really think it's very unacceptably out of whack, unbalanced. There are many poor people still struggling in our state, in Chester, in Camden, in Reading, in our region, and there are many folks in the communities that we think are better off. Restaurant workers. Right now, the statewide Pennsylvania Justice Group is working a lot on restaurant worker justice. Restaurant workers are said to make an average of $15,000 to $18,000 a year in Pennsylvania. Probably can't really make ends meet on that or take care of your children. And most restaurant workers do not have paid sick leave. Not good for anybody. Somebody pointed out, who wants a sick person delivering your hamburger to your table? No, it should be treated better. A lot of stress. And so many of us feel worried about this. So thank goodness we have a faith tradition. If you're new here today, our faith tradition is based in hope. Hope and courage and love. So we have to call on that hope right now. Because many of us can say, how do we find hope among all this gloom and doom? How do we know that we're not simply shuffling the chairs around on the deck of the Titanic while the string quartet plays Near My God to Thee with this environmental crises? We can start with an appreciative inquiry of the resilient history of human beings facing problems. The Stockdale paradox states, retain faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. Based on his experience as a survivor, Admiral Stockdale would say that we cannot naively say that we will solve the problems of carbon emissions and growing numbers of economically disenfranchised members of the human family by Easter or by the end of President Obama's second term. No. This reminds me of James Luther Adams, the great Unitarian minister who saw firsthand the horrors of World War II. Adams says faith requires us to embrace hope even when the facts indicate otherwise. You are called, as a religious person, you're called to be hopeful regardless. Big challenge. But we have a living tradition of theologies drawing us out of comfortable systems of injustice. When people felt despair because only the elite and privileged were served communion, our religious tradition created a cup broadly designed for all to take communion, and that cup is now our chalice. Liberation theologies help people shed the chains of slavery and to work for women's rights and equality. We responded to the call to create sanctuaries for Central American refugees and safe and loving and fun congregations for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender folks. Our history of these theological calls and responses creates a rich treasure trove for us to use today living on our new earth. In the small hut of the Concord Woods, buried in a lot of snow today, Henry David Thoreau lived out his philosophy. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. He said, we are happy in proportion to the things we can do without. Radical. That's countercultural, obviously, today as much as ever. We're happy in proportion to things we can do without. I think many of us, from the Great Recession forward now, have been reminded of the spiritual truth that our souls have always known. Don't get caught up in trying to figure out the fanciest, best dinner my wife and I can go out to, or taking that vacation that maybe we can afford, maybe we can't, but we should take that big vacation anyway. We should, or else it says something about us. Caught up. That's a lot of noise in the culture. The truth is, if Scrabble and drinking tea with somebody I love, that might be about as happy as I can get. And otherwise, I'm like a dog chasing my tail. So let's come back to the rich treasure trove of people. It's true. We know these things to be true. Jesus probably said them, but we could listen to our souls and learn them as well. While in the Hanoi Hilton, Stockdale was convinced that his hellish experience would become a defining moment in his life. But he didn't do that by just sitting around. You know what, if my wife and I keep writing these letters, we'll probably get a great deal from a publisher and make a lot of money off a book. And, maybe I'll be a vice presidential candidate for a funny little guy from Texas with big ears. And I see this is going to work out great somehow. Maybe they'll make a movie. No, he built towards this problem becoming a turning point, one small action at a time. Stuck in the cell, use your crappy little pencil and write your letter a letter. I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear in the pulpit. Was that swearing, technically? You get your broom out and make a little noise so that the rest of the guys know, you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm right here. Just do one little thing. So our hellish climate change problem could be our defining moment. We could take action and do things. Let me say this one. Small group ministries, do you guys, I should have checked this out. Sorry, Rena's tell me yes. Good. Many of our congregations over the decades said, we have good worship experiences, we don't have as much opportunity to grow spiritually and connect with others. We stole an idea from the Methodists and created small group ministry programs that over half our congregations have. They're very successful. I think that environmental justice is probably the most common issue besides GLBT justice that our congregations have around the country. What if our 40 UU congregations in Pennsylvania decided to become energy efficient, not only use less power from the grid, but start using solar energy and sending it back to the grid? Somebody argued with me that we couldn't do that if we set our minds to it. And what a model we would set for others. But we have to pick something. So take a step back from that, Kent. I'm offering a spiritual exercise. Reverend Peter is not here, so listen to Kent. Listen to Kent. Peter's in Peru. Kent is here. Okay. Choose a spiritual justice issue about which you feel discouraged. That should not be difficult if you're paying attention. And then decide that you're going to do one thing. Now, I know many of you are already doing more than one thing, so this would just be a mindfulness of doing the thing you're already doing. I know Bill's already ahead of a group that's doing first suburbs work here, helping people have healthy transitions from housing to employability. Anyway, Bill can tell you about it. It's very good stuff. Our UU plan efforts are helping restaurant workers get sick leave right now. The Chester Share the Plate program was just talking, pick something. And one more thing I want to mention, the state legislature is just about to visit a bill that will codify the ability for predatory loan companies to go in on payday and make loans with 300% interest payments, with 2-week balloon payments. This is a way to destroy a poor person's life in a cycle that just goes downhill. We should oppose this bill. That's ridiculous to have 300% interest rates. Pick something and do it. But here's the other spiritual exercise, which is just as important. Choose something in your own life that you're struggling to be hopeful about. And think about one thing that you could do that might make a change. If you're struggling with physical health, try making one small dietary or exercise change. If you're overly tired, try to get 10 or 15 minutes more sleep for a couple nights or one night. If there's a broken relationship in your life, which is hard on your heart, think about maybe writing a short letter or a little email. Just take your broom out and make a little noise. Do something. The great Spanish novelist Miguel de Unamuno said, "It is in the deepest despair that is born the greatest hope." This can be true when we accept the facts of life, never give up, and take one step at a time towards a better place. So often our past successes show us the way to stepping stones for the future. Recovering alcoholics know this. If you stop drinking, you never believed you could stop drinking, and you're having a problem today, you know, well, I stopped drinking, so maybe I can tackle this problem today. It's not the presence or absence of difficulties, but how we respond to inevitable problems that allows us to prevail. How do we use these as opportunities to grow stronger and to find peace and to be in right relations with ourselves, each other, and our precious Mother Earth? Blessings be.